So what are the dimensions? Again, we're going to learn some new terminology, and this is where it's going to be difficult because the terminology is different when we look at the Eckers. The terminology is different when we look at the DRDP. So this will probably be one of the most difficult things when you start looking at different assessment tools, is remembering what in the world they call everything. I get them confused. Okay, so my expectation is not that you memorize the terminology associated with it, but just be aware of the fact that there's different terms that mean different things for each tool that you use. Okay, it's just, how academia is. All right, so the dimensions that are measured in infants are relational climate, teacher sensitivity, facilitated exploration, and early language support. Those of you that have taken CD7, does this align with what we know is important in infant-toddler development? Say yes, it does. All right, if you haven't taken CD7, then you'll realize that. Toddler, positive climate and negative climate, so the emotional climate that's set. They measure the positive and the negative. Regard for the child perspective, child guidance. What's happening in 2-year-olds? What are they developing? They learn to say no and mine, right? And as teachers, do we need to respect that? Yes. Can they tell us no? Yes. They don't like that. They have the right to say no. And do they have the right to say mine? Yes, it's understanding how to guide those behaviors into ways that are socially acceptable. Okay, so it's measured as it should be. Facilitation of learning and development, quality of feedback. So how the teacher responds when the child says no, how does the teacher respond to that? Does it make a difference? Does it make a difference if you say, you don't say that to me? Or, I understand that you don't want to do that. You still have to put your shoes on, but I like that you used your words to communicate with me. Is there a difference in what the child walks away with? Yes. You still have to do this, but you used words. Good for you. I understand what you're feeling. Good for you. Is it wrong that a toddler expresses themselves? No. They can be mad. They can be angry. They still have to do what they have to do. Okay? But it makes a difference. And language modeling. What's happening in those infant toddler years? Do they learn language? Is the language the caregiver uses important? Yes. So we measure that. All right, in the pre-K years, positive climate, negative climate, teacher sensitivity, regard for student perspectives, productivity, instructional learning formats, concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. So we have more that we're starting to measure, okay, as the children go up. It's simplified over here. It doesn't mean it's any less important, but we're focusing in on the key emotional and social development points. So the kindergarten through 3rd, positive climate, negative climate, teacher sensitivity, regard for student perspectives, behavior management, instructional learning formats, concept development, quality feedback, and language modeling. So K through 3rd looks a whole lot like the pre-K measurements, right? And that's why we keep separating these kiddos that are in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and yet emotionally and socially, they are very similar to our preschool children. This is one of the reasons why we fight and are continuing to fight for a K through 3rd credential. Okay? So children going into liberal studies have to get a specific credential that qualifies them to teach kindergarten through 3rd grade children. Right now you get a credential and you can either teach 6th grade or you can teach kindergarten. Is there a very big difference in those grades? Yes. And yet the training that goes into teachers for these different grades is exactly the same. So do you see why kindergarten through 3rd look a whole lot more like preschoolers, socially and emotionally? They still need that same. And right now, we're not acknowledging that. Hopefully sometime. So the domains, what they call the domains, is one of the domains in the either classroom assessment scoring guide or the dimensions guideline is emotional support. Okay, second. So the dimensions are found within the domains and focus on different aspects of the teacher-child interactions. So each domain has a bunch of different dimensions. Okay, it's kind of like if you've taken a look at the foundations book, the dimensions are similar to how you think of as the foundations. So there's a bunch of different dimensions which in each domain. So an indicator, the relationship, the positive effect. I think we're going to look at the example and then we'll go back because it's easier. All right. So this is basically what it looks like. Okay, if we break it up, these are what is going to be measured. So classroom interactions, and then the domain is emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. So within classroom interactions, we're going to be separated into the different domains. Then within each of those domains is a dimension. So do we see how, first of all, this is incredibly complicated, and that you cannot just pick up the book and the scoring guide and walk into a classroom and say, I got this. It's a very difficult tool to use. It is not very teacher-friendly in that you can just pick it up and use it, okay? So if we're looking at the cons of it, you can't just pick it up. But because it is so intense, and the training is so intense, we have a lot of reliability in the tool. So it's a trade-off. We get more reliable with more intense the tools. We get more reliable and we get more valid. If we're taking a look at social and emotional support, what do you think is going to give us more information? Something that a whole book is used to measure, or a 10-item checklist? The whole book, right? A 10-item checklist might give you information, but are you assured that it's necessarily valid or even reliable? No. So we have a trade-off, okay? It gives you great information, but it's a very intense tool. So what I don't want you to worry about is memorizing all of these different parts of it. Okay, the purpose of looking at this is so that you can see all of the little teeny weeny details that are measured in this tool. This is just one branch. So instructional support, classroom interactions is broken up into 3 different layers, different domains, which is then broken up into all of those different dimensions. There you go.